A very warm welcome to IDFC First Bank presents Leaders of Tomorrow Season 11. I'm Ritwika Gupta. Now, the upcoming interim budget is a precursor to the more comprehensive budget that will follow post-Lok Sabha elections. But on the show today, we'd still want to give all the entrepreneurs and MSMEs some key insights and tips as to what they can watch out for, what they can expect from the interim budget. And to delve into the key areas, we have put together a panel discussion. Joining me live right now, we have Vinod Kumar, President of India SME Forum, Brinda Jagirdar, Economist, and Sachin Gupta, Executive Director and Chief Rating Officer, Care Ratings. Thank you, Vinod, Brinda, and Sachin for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
So I want to kick this off with a common question to each of you by way of opening remarks. Tell me, what are the big headlines that you're watching out for? The interim budget 2024 is not expected to bring about substantial changes to the tax laws, but really, what needs to be prioritized according to you? What are your key expectations? Vinod, maybe we could start with you.
Well, thank you. In fact, what I am looking out for is primarily micro enterprises. We are looking forward to relief in the GST taxation structure. Because if you look at their number in terms of micro enterprises in the country, they are the highest in number, but their contribution towards tax collection is very low.
Okay.
So instead of keeping on having them in the GST structure, we would look out for completely getting most of the micro enterprises out of the GST ambit. That's one. Second is, when we're talking about entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial development in terms of our infrastructure for MSMEs,
sure.
Out of a total of 7,000 plus clusters across the country, only 142 clusters have got some sort of coverage in terms of infrastructural development. And we would look forward to more cluster development subsidies.
Brinda?
This budget it's going to be a vote on account, but I think it's going to be more of the same. I expect continuity over here, a glide path to the fiscal deficit numbers, and of course, continued increase in capex and greater focus on increasing production and productivity. The manufacturing sector, I think, will get some more attention over here, along with the MSMEs.
Absolutely.
And yes, the most important, I think, is the government's fiscal deficit number, which will, in spite of all the challenges, which I think the government will stick to its numbers, and we will see a glide path towards a greater consolidation of the fiscal deficit.
Sachin?
Thanks, Ritvika. Pleasure to be on the show. As you mentioned, this budget is an interim budget and it's more of a vote on account. So there may not be too many policy announcements here, as indicated by the finance minister already. I think the critical thing to look at, if I, look at the macro position, we are coming out of the last 2-3 very tough years in terms of COVID and its impact on the financials, with the government having to dole out some subsidies, some additional funding, etc.
Yes.
So what I would be looking out for in the budget is that the government's balance sheet is managed well, so that the fiscal deficit, which they had projected to remain at about 5.9% of the GDP, that should remain in control, because that would indicate that the government still has, I would say, unused gunpowder, which can be used in future for, say, sectors like MSME.
Sure.
And then the second larger point I would like to make in my opening comments is on the government's continued focus on the capex. So you may recall last time the government had focused on capital expenditure, and the figure of 10 lakh crores was spoken about. As per our understanding, that fair amount of that money has actually been spent across multiple sectors. We would expect that focus to continue. Just because there is a change of, this is an interim budget, there should not be a big break in that. So whichever way, even with the vote on account, that spending, because that has a further domino effect on the rest of the economy sectors like cement, steel, and even MSMEs who are involved.
So staying with you, Sachin, there's a focus on PLI 2.0, which means we are pushing the envelope from Make in India to Making for the World. There are said to be PLI benefits for R&D investments, as well as for the chemicals and space sectors as well. How do you think this will help India, elevate its manufacturing capabilities, exports, and also draw the attention of global companies?
A very good question. And, till now, while PLI has been a key focus area for the government, we may not have yet seen the any tremendous benefit reflected in terms of either very large projects or any great revenue inflow.
Sure.
But what we have to also understand, time is actually just right, especially because of this whole US-China economic rivalry, which is there, in which India can occupy a good space in that China plus one strategy of most of the global procuring companies. So in that respect, I think PLI 2.0, when it looks at expanding into various new segments
Sure.
and other sub-segments of the sectors already covered, I think it's a very opportune thing. Globally, across the countries, whenever a impetus has to be given, the industries would require some support from the government, and this is the government's clear focus on putting on increase in manufacturing, and that I believe is the even the economic environment globally is quite set for it. We will just have to prove to the world that we can be cost competitive, because Southeast Asian countries which have been playing for a much longer time on manufacturing better competitiveness, we will have to kind of reach that level, and for that I think PLI will be a good step forward.
All right, Vinod, I want to bring you in here. It's been reported that MSME owners can expect some relief in the minimum threshold for GST registration in this year's budget. Limit is expected to increase to 50 lakhs. Do you think this could prove to be a booster for small-scale businesses?
Absolutely. In fact, this is something that we've been talking about for quite some time. Frankly, if you look at three major points, the first is 84% of micro, small, and medium enterprises registered in India fall under the 1 crore turnover category.
Okay.
So that means the moment the category limit, which is like for manufacturers, it's 40 lakhs now. If that is raised to somewhere around 1 crore or even 0.5 crore or around that figure, it will leave them out from the entire complex GST filing, which most people, most entrepreneurs of 1 crore category are not able to handle. You see, we have done a lot of studies where we figured out that GST compliance costs alone can be up to 3 to 4% of the total revenue of MSMEs. Forget the profits. So the moment you are able to raise limits, this will enhance cash flows for productive purposes. The other very important thing is entrepreneurs are able to or have to spend between 14 to 15 productive days. A lot of small entrepreneurs have, micro entrepreneurs, I should not say small, have shut shops post the GST rollout. A lot of them have actually preferred to remain small to avoid GST. But the fact remains that till we can bring GST to a point where it can be handled very easily from your own mobile, till that time, we'll have to leave the micro enterprises out. And there is no other choice. And if the government can seriously actually bring this limit to 1 crore, that will be the best news for most micro enterprises in India.
Absolutely. So Brinda, coming to you, it's also been reported that, like the previous year, this year too will emphasize on the economic empowerment of women entrepreneurs, as well as inclusive growth for small-scale farmers. How do you think this will impact the landscape, especially when it comes to entrepreneurship in agriculture and also women in the MSME sector?
I think women are greatly involved when it comes to the social sector and agriculture. So this emphasis on women empowerment is definitely a welcome step. It's very, and even for the MSMEs, you have a lot of women involved in this sector. So I think the focus on financial inclusion and women empowerment would be very, very good. It would help the overall development of the country.
Sure.
There's just one point I'd like to make here, that now for GST, we have 40 lakhs and for in goods and 20 lakhs for in services. Above this, at this point, they have to register for GST. In the Northeast, it is like 20 lakhs and 10 lakhs. So what I would feel is that bringing them into the GST network, into the fold of GST, is helping them to come into the formal sector in the economy. And that would help them greatly, because they would get linked with the other sectors that are there. Okay, maybe not global supply chains, but definitely domestic supply chains. They will be able to have a pie of that.
Sure.
So we need to make them grow. We need to make them efficient. We need to make them productive. And I think that's the focus. And of course, yes, if you increase the limit, it will give an immediate relief to some of the MSMEs. But more than anything else, more than the relief, I think they would need help in compliance. So they have to be compliant. They can't be lax on that. So I think it'll be good if the government can help them in some way in becoming, in reducing the cost of compliance.
It's time for a quick break here. We'll be back shortly. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching IDFC First Bank Presents Leaders of Tomorrow Season 11. Tonight we are breaking down the Interim Budget 2024 in an exclusive panel discussion. Listen in. Sachin, circling back to you, speaking of India's infrastructure development, it has been a key priority for the government. Tell us what specific aspects of, public expenditure and government investment would you like to see as far as infrastructure is concerned? And how do you think this will benefit smaller businesses?
Infrastructure development has actually been one of the good growth stories for the corporate India and for the government. Now, what we expect going forward is that the government should focus on new sectors and expand the scope of certain sectors. So, for example, water supply, smart metering. These are some of the aspects which have been introduced in some of the geographies of the country, and they've been reasonably successful. So there will be a good reason for us to expand those models, successful models across newer areas within the country. Urban infra is also a key area. I mean, our cities are nowhere comparable to some of the large economies that we see in the Western world. So therefore, that is something that the government has to focus on. In terms of how it impacts the rest of the economy. So I think that is a well-researched, well-proven fact that infrastructure has multiple dimensions of, helping on the in the overall economy. So first thing is the most direct impact is the goods that are used in building infrastructure. So something like, say, cement, steel, which are the core kind of commodities which are used in building any building material. Secondly, much of the infrastructure that we're talking will also have a positive impact on the environment and improve the quality of life. And if I go to the third order, is something that will kind of improve the productivity and also global capital, wherein we can say that we are not only a $5 trillion economy, but we also have infrastructure which is comparable to the best in the world.
Sure. Vinod, every year the budget is expected to have a significant impact on the MSME sector. Tell us what policies can actually address some of the challenges, like liquidity and financial inclusion faced by MSMEs in the current economic landscape.
One of the things that the Honorable Prime Minister has put in place is the Mudra scheme. Now, that's been a game changer for entrepreneurs at the rural level, both women and men, wherein we could easily, expand the coverage of credit to micro enterprises in rural areas and semi-urban areas by increasing the limit of the turnover to 2 crores and the loan limit to 50 lakhs. When it comes to lending for MSMEs, we need to make changes to expand CGTMSE so that, we can add maybe another 2 lakh crores of collateral-free lending to MSMEs at competitive rates. That would address the working capital needs. See, mind us that we are looking at a 5 trillion economy. So when you are looking at a 5 trillion economy, the additional capital also needs to be there for MSMEs to come forward and contribute that much more. Similarly, the third very important thing that we need to have stressed asset reconstruction fund of at least 10 to 20,000 crores. That will help us revive viable MSME units that either are under DRT or are on the verge of NPAs or some other temporary challenges. That is something that is required now.
Brinda, coming to you, speaking of improving digital commerce, the budget is also likely to support UPI, ONDC initiatives. There are expected incentives for, merchants in rural areas, tax incentives. In what ways do you believe, this can impact the digital commerce ecosystem?
Today in India, we have 136 crore of Aadhaar cards, internet users 120 crore, mobile 114 crore, and e-commerce users 80 crore. So I think this itself is a very, very large number ready to be used for growth. A recent survey showed that the MSMEs, there were three top concerns. One was, of course, finding talent. The other was reducing operating cost, and the third was access to credit. Interestingly, access to credit goes to number 3 and not number 1. But I would agree that we need to expand access to credit. Is a very important concern, and we need to expand the credit guarantee scheme for this, certainly. But I think more than that, it would be what we need to do is look at the way we're giving out credit to the MSMEs. They are not, collateral lending is not something that they can measure up to. So cash flow based lending is the way to go, and not collateral-based lending for the MSMEs.
Now, the startup funding in India, declined to a 5-year low figure in 2023, $7 billion as compared to $25 billion received in the previous year. This is, of course, amidst a worsening global macroeconomic environment tossed with, geopolitical tensions. Sachin, I want to know your opinion on this. Do you think there were some misses from the previous budget for the startup industry? And what policies are required to give a boost to the ecosystem and make it more conducive for investments?
There is a clear, as they say, funding winter right now, and some of the other Western economies. And yes, these are high-risk investments, and therefore, there is a likelihood that even going forward, the free access to private equity venture funding, which was available to any startups ecosystem, including India, that will be affected. We've already seen it, and even going forward, it may not come back in a hurry. So in that sense, I think this will become really the testing ground for some of the startups, which will have to really come back into profitability, into viability, maybe much sooner. And they may have to relook at their business models. So I think, I don't think that there is any real miss. Because broadly, in terms of the enabling ecosystem, I think the government has been kind of providing it. Ultimately, it's a free entrepreneur which has to kind of succeed. And in that sense, I think a little limitation on the funding is putting some pressure on them, and we will have to see, the ones which will kind of come out successfully out of.
So, we are sitting at the beginning of 2024. Vinod, I want to come to you next. As far as the interim budget is concerned, tell me what would be your advice for small businesses in terms of what they should look out for, keep in mind. What can you tell us?
I tell most entrepreneurs these days that the government is completely working towards creating a great entrepreneurial ecosystem in India. And we don't need to look at just the budget, because there are announcements that keep on happening throughout the year. And this government has been extremely proactive in listening to what MSMEs have to say, what they want. And I completely commend the government on that. The fact that, they're not waiting for Feb and for bringing out the exact things that we need. So, generally, when I talk to MSMEs, I say, keep on updating yourself about what the government is trying to do on a regular basis, not just when the budget comes around. So normally entrepreneurs do look at, personal income tax slabs, corporate tax rates, MET tax credit rules that can impact your finances, and import or export duty tweaks, very, very basic things. But like I said, most MSMEs these days are always waiting for the Prime Minister to make a new announcement rather than just depend on the budget or what it says.
All right. Brinda, I'll let you have the last word. Similar question, your advice for entrepreneurs, what they should look out for and what they should be prioritizing.
They should be very happy. The ONDC, the Open Network Digital Commerce, has been a game changer. Right now, it's only limited to 8 cities. It's a small fund. I think that should increase. And the recent agreement signed between ONDC and Meta, ONDC and Google, I think this is really, really going to change the game for MSMEs. With Meta, they would be able to connect on WhatsApp with the businesses, solution providers, with the consumers, and with the Google and the Google Maps, it would be easy to locate. So I think the MSMEs now have really, they can look forward to a great time ahead, because the digital infrastructure that has been put in place has been very helpful for them. And with this new agreement with Meta and Google, ONDC is set to take off. And I think this will really, really help the MSMEs. But more than that, I think we should help the MSMEs to grow. And I hope these initiatives will help them to grow. We don't want to stunt their growth. And we need to have bigger players, so that they can take advantage of the economies of scale and economies of scope. And so I think that's where we should be moving, and not looking at increasing innovation, increasing entrepreneurship, increasing the compliance in the MSMEs. I think that's what we should make them more and more like what we expect from the corporates, rather than giving them any kid glove treatment.
Well, it was a great discussion. Thank you so much for joining us today on Leaders of Tomorrow.
Thanks, Ritwika. It was a pleasure being on the show, and I look forward to coming again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ritwika. It was a pleasure to be here on the panel. I look forward to having more such interactions.
Thank you, Ritwika. It was a pleasure to be on the show, and it was a very, very interesting conversation. Thank you very much.
With that, it's a wrap on this episode of IDFC First Bank Presents Leaders of Tomorrow Season 11. We hope you enjoyed the discussion. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.